Well, Australian Archbishop Philip Wilson has been found guilty of concealing child sex abuse by a priest. Wilson is the most senior member of the Catholic Church to be convicted on such a charge. He is the Archbishop of Adelaide and is now expected to be sentenced in June. He faces a maximum penalty of 2 years in prison. Well, Stephen Woods is a survivor of clergy sex abuse and an abuse survivors justice campaigner. He joins me now from Melbourne. Thanks so much for speaking to us. This verdict was a long time in the making. Are you happy with this outcome? And what precedent, if any, do you think it sets?
We are, all our victims, all us victims here in Australia are really happy that this has set a wonderful precedent that clergy members, no matter how high up in the church, will be held accountable for crimes that they committed so long ago.
Okay, but I mean, he has been convicted. That's an achievement in itself, but he's not yet been sentenced. In your opinion, what sentence do you think would actually be appropriate in his case?
Well, as the magistrate and as the prosecution has asked for a custodial sentence, going to jail, then I think they are the ones who are at the centre of the case will know all the history that Wilson covered up all the way through for decades and decades of hundreds and hundreds of abuse cases, and that he should go to jail because, as the magistrate said, he put the reputation of the church far ahead of any of the victims for decades.
It is a maximum 2-year sentence that he faces, though. Do you think that's appropriate, that's sufficient?
Yes, 2 years is sufficient according to the law for covering up, because it sends a very clear sentence that a very clear idea to everyone that you can't cover up and get away with it, and you will be held accountable for your crimes.
You know, Stephen, some have said this case and the case of George Pell, for example, have helped open the gates, so to speak, for taking legal action against individuals in the church. Do you think that's true? Have the floodgates been opened now?
I think the floodgates were opened by the Royal Commission that we had in Australia, that it put an absolute definite point in Australia's history on the criminality that the church has portrayed and has done over the years, and that these prosecutions are a consequence of the Royal Commission. It cannot be understated for just the amount of evidence that victims have given over the decades to the authorities, and finally the authorities are listening, and that's what is really been good.
Okay, Stephen Woods, thank you so much for joining us there from Melbourne.